Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I had quite an excursion over the weekend. Drove about 1,200, well not me personally, 1,200 kilometers. And let me first show you some photographs I took of the sunset. And this was taken in northern Kenya, beyond 200 kilometers beyond Garissa. Let's move on to Africa. US airstrikes kill hundreds in Somalia as shadowy conflict ramps up. So far this year, the intensity is on a pace to eclipse the 2018 record. During January and February, the United States Africa Command reported killing 225 people in 24 strikes in Somalia. People need to pay attention to the fact that there is this massive war going on, said Brittany Brown. The war in Somalia appears to be on autopilot, she added. Mr. Schwartz, who was once the ambassador to Somalia, says it could be there is some well thought out strategy behind all of this, but I really doubt it. We go after the network when the network presents itself, and whether a single node or a concentration, he said. We've developed intelligence and are sussing out the relationship between the leadership and those being led, between those being led and those being trained or recruited or massed for an attack. We understand the network better than we have in years past. This drone war is off the charts. What is sub-Saharan Africa? Asks The Economist. 9,000 years ago, the Sahara Desert was a grassland inhabited by hunters who made rock paintings of hippos and giraffes. For a millennium before the 16th century, a flourishing trade carried salt, gold, and slaves across the dunes. Today, the Sahara is more often seen as a barrier cutting Africa in two. Academics, policymakers, and newspapers, including The Economist, routinely refer to part of the continent as sub-Saharan Africa. International institutions such as the World Bank and IMF are internally organized along the same lines. It seems Africa is defined by a wall of sand, but what is sub-Saharan Africa? Clearly, sub-Saharan Africa is not just about physical geography, but has a cultural element too. A very famous Ivorian writer, minister, and general polymath, Bernard Dadier, passed away at 103. And I'm going to read this in French. Mort lente ou mort brusque, nombreuses seront les victimes de notre politique. Les trônes africains n'ont-ils pas toujours et encore toujours besoin de sang pour mieux briller? You'll have to go to Richard Wrap-Ups to translate that. It's very powerful. Fantastic article in the London Review of Books, which Hervé put me onto. Diary, Diana Stone. And she's visiting her aged grandmother in Harare. And she's describing how Zimbabweans greet each other. Maswere say, are you well? Taswere maswerao, I'm well only if you're well. Taswere, I'm well. She says that she was brought up in Harare. Her grandmother's in her 90s, lives in a cluster of cottages in a northern suburb, which used to be once one of the smartest in Harare, saying Zimbabwe's currency is a fairground ride, but the kind of unhinged fairground ride that kills people. In 2008, inflation reached 79.6 billion%. She says, I still have a few $1 trillion in a drawer somewhere. Describing how her mother went to buy a TV for $900 of bond. When she came back that afternoon with someone to help her carry it, it was already at $1,500. Currency settled at around 3.1. Describing the petrol crisis. Petrol itself is very cheap, the equivalent of 97 pence a litre. The difficulty is that there isn't any. The government argues that this is because people are hoarding and smuggling fuel, about which Zimbabwean Twitter which traffics largely in good jokes and good music, is incredulous and ironic. It is widely believed that a small number of people with good connections are making a vast profit from importing petrol. Getting a license to import means you can buy dollars from the Reserve Bank at the official 1-to-1 rate. The trick is very simple. You buy enough US dollars to import, for instance, 2 tankers of petrol, and then you either buy only one and make a solid 3-fold profit on your leftover dollars, or you buy 2 tankers and sell the other one for a profit across the border in Mozambique. So petrol and where to find it becomes a central subject of conversation in the same way Brexit is in the UK. On 12th January, we wake to find that the government has tripled the cost of petrol. Combis are forced to raise the price of a journey to $10 a bond, which means that for many commuters, including many nurses and teachers, going to work means a net loss. This is the final spark. Inside the complex, then she's describing the house where her grandmother lives. But you know, that point about it becoming a net loss just to go to work. Another friend of a friend was visiting family in Budiriro, a high-density suburb southwest of Harare, when he was seized by soldiers and made to crawl on all fours along the road while being beaten. He's the finance director of a small company, not a subversive, not known to the army personally, just a guy in the street. 25th of February, I said Zimbabwe finally overhauled its dysfunctional WAC and even voodoo FX regime, but they've maintained the market at 2.5, and that's clearly a false market. 21st of January, I said the mind game that ZANU-PF played on its citizens has evaporated in a puff of smoke. In that article, I was quoting Piers Pigou of the International Crisis Group, and I said that the petrol price hike was the proximate cause, and Piers said, and ignited the already dry tinder on the ground. I concluded by saying it's a tipping point moment, and that there is a correlation between high inflation and revolutionary conditions. The Algerian government plane landed in Geneva, and it's assumed that Bouteflika departed in it to go back. There was no immediate sign of any ambulance or cortege carrying the 82-year-old. A Reuters witness saw the Gulfstream executive jet, the one which had brought him to Geneva on February the 24th, touchdown at the airport amid a heavy police presence. I take you back to Kapuscinski's Shah of Shahs and 2 quotes. The choice of that moment is the greatest riddle of history. And what we say is, if the crowd disperses and goes home, the revolution is over. So we've got to watch the crowd in Algeria. Sudanese women protesters are sentenced to 20 lashes and a month in jail. This is just unbelievable. And I came across the story that there's an old Sudanese revolutionary song sung by women. We sing in our prison as you tremble in your castle. Bashir, as I wrote, is a Harry Houdini. He would not have lasted more than 3 decades, but it's clear these are the last days or end times. Carlos Lopez tweeted, elections in Guinea-Bissau, my country needs a new dawn. South African oil shares up 5.22% this year. Dollar versus rand, the rand remains soft at 14.4345. Ghana Stock Exchange is down 2.52% this year. President Mutharika of Malawi has snubbed his Democratic Progressive Party political gurus and picked a political novice, Everton Chimulirenji, as his running mate for the vice presidency, saying this decision has thrown the race wide open and made the Malawi Congress Party, Lazarus Chakwera, favorite to win. This is a photograph of a fisherman on Lake Malawi. Rwanda aims to sell its stake in the cement firm Semerua. The company is 51% owned by South Africa's PPC Limited. installed annual production capacity of 600,000 tons. This is a chart from Mir Thakkar of Ghana, Kenya, and Angola Eurobonds, and you can see how the market was boosted. Prices went high, yields went low as the market got bulled up in early January.